Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Elena Balestra, and I'm Membership and Capacity Building Manager at the European Patients Forum. It's a pleasure to welcome you today. Before we dive into today's topic, I would like to share with you a couple of housekeeping rules to make your participation easier and more participative. You can see that you have a control panel at the right side of your screen. If you want to ask us a question or share a comment with us, you can type in the question box that is at the bottom of your instrument bar. You can keep asking questions during the presentation. There will be a dedicated Q&A moment afterwards for you to really receive the answer from our speakers. Due to the large number of participants, we are not able to give you the floor using your voice, so we will kindly ask you to use the question panel that you have to communicate with us. If you want to minimize the control panel to have a full view of the presentation that I'm showing you, you can just click on the orange arrow at the top of the control bar. The webinar is being recorded, so if you don't want any of the questions you will ask to be recorded, please just let us know, and afterwards we will cut the video when you will ask the question. And also the video and the slides will be available shortly after the webinar. Now that we took care of the housekeeping rule, we can dive into today's topic. Today, we are going to talk about pro bono legal support. Pro bono means something that is given free of charge. So when it's something that is given and provided by a professional and not only like a simple person as a volunteer, we define it as pro bono. And we know that patient organization and non-profit organizations in general during the life cycle do need often legal expertise and legal support. And it could be, for example, when a group of patients wants to establish a new organization and to want to legalize their way of working together. So, for example, when they have to create an organization and create a constitution, for example, or in another case, when they, for example, they would like to move their head office from one place or another, or to hire new employees and they don't know what type of contract is needed and so on. So we know that legal expertise sometimes could be costly, and also the legal expertise could have a very great impact on the organization and the way of working. And this is why, as we know that this is really an important topic for our members and the patient community at large, we decided to invite two speakers to guide us through how patients' organization can receive pro bono or legal support. And I'm very happy to introduce you to Adrian Lewis, which is program officer at Thomson Reuters Foundation, who will be present Thomson Reuters Foundation program, Trustful. And as well, we have with us today Edward Callows, who is Vice President of the EPF member, the European Congenital Heart Disease Organisation, ECHDO. And by a professional, he's a psychotherapist, and he works at a head of clinic psychology service at the Policlinico San Donato, and he's also a university researcher. Edward and Adrian, thank you very much for being with us today. And Adrian, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Lena. As Elena's just mentioned, my name is Adrian Lewis, and I'm the program officer at Trustful. And I'll just start here with a little bit of context, and I'll note that Trustful is the pro bono legal program of the Thomson Reuters Foundation, which is the charitable arm of Thomson Reuters, the largest news and information provider in the world. Trustful is one of the Foundation's 4 key programs, and they're mentioned here, but for the sake of time, I will skip introductions to all of those. And I'll just say that that Trustful is a global pro bono legal program, and we connect NGOs and social enterprises with law firms and corporate legal teams around the world who provide legal services completely free of charge to the social organizations. And this allows nonprofits to dedicate more of their limited resources, including time, energy, personnel, and of course money, to achieving their social mission rather than investing in expensive legal expertise, as Elena mentioned. And sorry, okay. We'll start with the map. As I said, the Trustful Network is international, and we've facilitated legal projects in 175 countries around the world. And the numbers on the map are a little bit outdated, a little bit, I think they're from 6 months ago, but currently the Trustful Network has over 5,000 nonprofits, nonprofit members, or as 5,000 total members, which is over 4,000 nonprofits and about 850 law firms and corporate legal teams supporting those nonprofits. And then I'll go into our core service a little bit and the process for obtaining free legal assistance. And the first step for nonprofits like yourselves is to become a member of the Trustful Network. And I'll work with Elena after the webinar, as she was saying, to make sure you all have the resources and the links to the relevant websites and guidance on submitting a membership application. But just to go through it briefly, the organization would first complete and submit our online membership application form, which just asks for some details about the organization's legal structure and incorporation status and the nature of your work and where you operate. And once accepted, once we review the membership application and once the organization is accepted as a member, you'll receive login details to access our online portal. And through the portal, you can submit an individual request for legal assistance. And doing that, submitting an individual request just entails answering a few questions about the details of the legal issue and maybe 2 or 3 sentences describing the legal question that you have and including any kind of relevant deadlines and the countries where you'll be needing assistance. And then the next step in the process is to schedule a call with a member of Trust Law's internal legal team. And usually it doesn't last more than 10 or 15 minutes, but it's just an opportunity for our lawyers to make sure we have all the relevant information. And we use those details to draft kind of a more comprehensive summary of the legal request, which we then circulate to our network of, again, about 850 law firms and corporate legal teams. And then they independently offer to support the legal request. And we also actively our team reaches out to the law firms in our network to request support for your legal project. And this is just some of the areas where we can support our member organizations, and we can facilitate legal assistance for nonprofits into 2 basic areas. And the first is in everyday corporate and commercial matters. So as you can see here, these might be drafting employment contracts, reviewing collaboration agreements, providing intellectual property advice on things like trademarks and patents and copyright, as well as corporate structuring advice on, for example, how to structure your registration or incorporation of a new legal entity if you're expanding to operate in a new country. And we also do other kind of basic commercial contracts like services agreements or fundraising and sponsorship agreements and legal advice around other kind of regulatory compliance issues. And the second part, which you'll see at the bottom here, is legal research and sector guides. And this just shows a few of them. And these are generally larger research programs and larger pieces of work than our standard commercial projects. They usually involve a nonprofit partnering with a law firm or several law firms in many cases to carry out legal research on laws and regulations concerning a particular matter across several different countries, and then kind of conducting comparative analysis of those different regulations. And generally, it's in an effort to identify best practices for implementation of similar laws in different countries. And these research programs usually culminate in the publication of a legal report addressing something like, as you can see here, guidance for nonprofits on ensuring compliance with the General Data Protection Regulation that came into effect last year. And we also published several sector guides, as you see second here, on the best legal structures for social enterprises. This one is in England and Wales. I think we also have one on structuring nonprofit ventures in Switzerland and in other countries and other regions. We've also published several other guides as like crowdsourcing, and of course the implications of Brexit on charities and the nonprofit sector in general. And then I'll just go on to some of the, to more specifically, some of the individual projects and programs that we've done in the past. And this is just some of the legal research that we've done for Fundación La Par in Spain. And they're an organization that supports individuals with disabilities, and they were looking for legal research on the protection of vulnerable victims in criminal proceedings. And our lawyers did some comparative legal research. This one's across several jurisdictions. I'm not sure if you can see it here at the bottom, but there's Portugal and Denmark and the UK and Finland and several countries across the EU, and looking into how they were implementing these directives. And yes, and then the Polish Disability Forum also was asked lawyers to conduct research on implementation of the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. I'm not sure I have control of the slides, Elena.
Yeah, you have, sorry.
Okay. Sorry. Okay. So that research was conducted across several jurisdictions listed there, and used as guidance for Polish lawmakers on implementation of the law in Poland. Then the next slide, Elena. Okay. Thank you. And then going back to the kind of the corporate and commercial projects that we do, these are some of the most common requests that we get for legal assistance, and I'll address some of these here, some of the common issues that come up. And the next slide, Elena. Thanks. One of the areas that's we have many requests in is intellectual property, and these are some of the questions, the kinds of questions that we get from members. If you have a brand, idea, or invention that you want to protect, that's kind of the domain of intellectual property. And the box here at the bottom is just a request that we've gotten from one of our members from an Irish organization that had several written materials that it was sharing with other organizations, and wanted to be sure that the intellectual property there was protected, and they weren't quite sure how to structure or go about their intellectual property protections around that material. And so they were just asking lawyers for general advice on how best to protect that material. We go to the next one. Thanks. And then in employment, that's another area where we get a lot of requests. Things about, whether you have employees or volunteers or interns, all of these different individuals will need separate and unique employment contracts. And so some of the requests that we get are for assistance to draft template consultant contracts or template employment contracts, or to review existing contracts, and maybe they haven't been reviewed by lawyers in several years, and just to ensure that they're still in compliance with relevant laws and regulations. Often organizations will ask us to have a lawyer review them. And also around better understanding local regulations around employment and the laws and around employing different kinds of people that may only be applicable in the national context. Can we go to the next, Elena? Thanks. Other common areas are commercial contracts and collaboration agreements. In terms of commercial contracts, it can be anything from partnership agreements and collaboration agreements. If you work with external partners, it's always good to have the kind of rights and obligations of each party written down and clearly defined, just to make sure the partnership goes smoothly throughout the process. And so some of the requests we get frequently are assistance to review collaboration agreements or to draft collaboration agreements. And we also get a lot of requests around sponsorship agreements or fundraising. Often that is heavily regulated as well. And so a lot of organizations will need some legal assistance to better understand local regulations and to make sure that they're in full compliance with those. And the next one, please. And these are just several of our member organizations, health and wellness organizations across Europe. Exto is one of them, and we also have several in every EU country, I believe, working locally and internationally, and they are a very active group of members that we are very happy to support. And then next slide. And this is just this is an online tool, the Legal Health Check, that you can log on to our website. And again, we'll be sure that you have links to all these resources after the webinar. But this is just an online tool that you can go online and fill out, and it gives you gives you better insight into the legal issues and legal concerns that might be affecting your organization, and it helps to guide you and signpost you to the kinds of legal assistance that you might want to request through Trust Law. And that's all. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Adrian, for this overview, and I'm sure feel free already, audience, to ask some question. I remind that we will take all the questions after both presentations, and I would like now to we already introduced Edward briefly. Sorry, I lost control of all my instruments at the moment. So I just need to, okay, it's good. So
okay.
Exto, we already say your name, everything, but the reason why we we asked Edward to be with us today is mainly because they, as an organization, they took advantage of trust law services. So they will briefly introduce, Edward will briefly introduce the organization, what ECHDO does, and also tell you a little bit briefly how they use trust law services, and to see, for example, like a real life example of how this collaboration could be. Thank you very much, Edward, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Elena, for inviting me. It's a real pleasure to introduce ECHDO and to tell you about how trust law was really a great help for us, and I hope that they will also be a great help for many of you who are listening. As you can see on the first slide, ECHDO is the European Congenital Heart Disease Organisation. Next. And basically, this is a European group of associations who are trying to help people with congenital heart disease and their families in order to share information, knowledge, and experience so that the treatment and the care for these people with congenital heart disease and their families they can have an improved quality of life, basically. Next slide. So as many of you who work in the non-profit associations know, it takes a very long time to start from an idea and then to actually formalize having an association, no matter where you are in Europe or in the world. And in fact, talk about forming a European association started at this Congress of Pediatric Cardiologists. It's called AEPC. It's the European Association of Pediatric Cardiology, already in 2006. So there were also, besides the professionals, there were also people working in patient organizations. There were patients themselves or family members, or also professionals like me who are representing this group of patients. And there was already talk about this in 2006. The first ECHDO meeting was in 2007, but it took quite some meetings to actually formalize the association in 2010 in London. So we decided, not we, because I came on the board in 2013. So the board back then decided to formalize the association in Brussels to be perhaps also close to the European Union, and well, also associations like EPF, thankfully, because this is the way we got in touch with Trust Law. It was through me attending the EPF meetings that I got to know Trust Law, and then I contacted them, and then we got the help I'm going to describe in the later slides. Next. So very quickly, the objective of ECHDO is, as I said, to provide up-to-date information, to lobby for European standards, to share information, to stimulate the development of national congenital heart disease support networks. Basically, we want to come together, give a voice to these patients, and share information with other associations. And this is how also I personally got to know about these associations, and how I set up one association in Malta, and also how I got involved in Italy, where I work with the national association called AICA, Associazione Italiana Cardiopatici Congeniti Adulti. Next slide. Okay, so as you can see, we want to, as an association, come together and maybe work on some projects together. For example, one of the projects we're working on now is to create this camp where the adolescents and young adults can attend. And by collaborating together, we can obtain funding and help patients and their families to participate to initiatives like these. Next slide. It's very important for us to create occasions to network between the different associations in different countries. In fact, one of our main objectives is to create the annual general meeting where we all meet and we all share our experiences. Next slide. Currently, we include both parent and patient groups, and we're representing 42 patient organizations with congenital heart disease in 29 countries. And out of these 42, 11 represent both adult patients and also the parents. Next slide. Here you can see how the board is constituted. Basically, I'm the only professional, and then there are also, the board is made up mainly of parents and of adults. Next slide. Okay, so as we said, our main objective is to share information and experience to improve the best possible care. Okay, and next slide. Now we come to what is most useful to you. I'm sorry for all this background information, but you have to a little bit understand where we're coming from to understand how why we required help from Trustful. So basically, we required help because in the previous board member, there was a Belgian parent who was helping us a little bit, but the problem is that the association was located at his house. Well, the association is still located at his house, and it was very difficult to get a neutral address and also a neutral bank account. We are currently still using his bank account. So this was one of the main reasons why we asked help from Trustful. We want to create, we want to give the association a neutral address, but we don't have enough finances to rent a place in Belgium at the moment. And obviously the board member, the ex-board member is not active anymore, so he is still helping us out, but we want to give continuity to the association. So having a neutral address, which doesn't cost a lot of money, is very important. And since none of us live in Belgium, this was extremely difficult. And to be honest, when I started talking with staff from Trustful, I was wondering, but will they be interested in this kind of issue? Because maybe I was thinking that there are so many more important issues which a law firm could take care of. But actually, they were so understanding and friendly, and I must say the application took some time because you need to fill in some forms, but the staff was very helpful. And I was actually surprised by how quickly they got us in touch with a Belgian law firm, White & Case. And also the people from White & Case were very professional, very friendly. And we started working together on how we can move forward on this. And they've contacted several service providers to get an address. We have identified which one we want to go forward with. And we have also together made a planification of how to get then the bank account also, because in order to get a bank account, you need to have an address. These can seem like very simple steps, but when the organization is run from people who are living in different countries and of whom none live in the countries where the association is registered, believe me, it is not so simple. So having a law firm help you with this is a great help. And then, in addition to this, we got help also from when it comes to the statutes, because of course, when the law firm provides help, they will look at your documentation, they will see how you have proceeded, And we have realized by looking at the documentation and also the notes from the various annual general meetings that all the decisions which had been previously taken by the previous board members and also by us at the annual general meetings, they had not been done correctly according to the Belgian law. So they are helping us also to ratify these decisions, and they are assisting us in a step-by-step procedure, and we are hoping to ratify all these decisions at the next annual general meeting. Next slide. So in order to conclude, we are currently working with White and Case on the ratification of the statutes as required by the Belgian law. And we hope that this will be approved in this year's next general meeting. And we are also hoping that we will finalize having a neutral address and getting a neutral bank account in order to facilitate us with the basic running of the association and to provide the next board members with something which is much more stable and which is much easier to run. And in order to conclude, I can say to all the people who are listening to me and who are thinking of applying and who are not sure, to apply even you are not sure, because as I said, the staff from Trustful, they are very helpful. They will answer all your questions, and they will clarify whether or not you are eligible for help. And surely, if possible, they will get you in touch with a law firm which can really help you on many possible issues. Next slide. And with that, I conclude. And I thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm available for any questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Edward, for your presentation. I already see that there are several questions for both of you. I will try to answer them all. I'm just checking if I haven't muted Adrian, hopefully. Yes. Okay, you're unmuted now. So I think you can still shoot your question. So I think the first question is for Adrian. And Elena is asking if how are you able to verify the law of the country from which come the requests? For example, if the question comes from Bulgaria or Serbia. I think this question is very much linked to like how do you connect basically the organization with the right people that can help? I think this is what Elena wanted to ask.
This is why the phone call that you have with our trust law lawyers is so important, because when you submit the initial request, you can put the country whose laws you think will likely apply, but it may be a different country's laws who would be applicable in the situation, depending on the work that you're asking the lawyers for. And so that's what we kind of clarify during what we call the project call. The lawyer will talk to you and ask kind of questions that will help them to determine which laws, which country's laws will be applicable. And so we kind of determine that through the call, and then they'll categorize the legal request when it's posted to our network of law firms under the law that they think is most applicable.
Excellent. Eva is asking, is ECHDO, I think is asking if ECHDO will be established as a IESBL, so a non-profit international organization, or as a Belgian no-profit organization, if you decided.
We are already registered as a non-profit organization in Belgium.
Okay, so a Belgian one or an international one?
We are an international organization, but we are registered under Belgian law.
Yeah. Because she's probably asking because Belgium, I know it by experience, has two types of organization. Either you are what is called in French ISBL, which has the international, or you are ASBL, which is only a local organization, but which doesn't prevent you from having international members either.
Okay, I can open the statute. I have it right here. I'm prepared.
Yeah, but that's fine. I think it's just out of curiosity, or probably someone is in the same situation as you at the moment deciding.
But we do, I can tell you for sure that we do have members from all over Europe.
Yeah.
So, but I will open the statute and I will tell you exactly.
Yeah. In the meantime, I pass another question to Adrian. So in the meantime, you can look up. So Marie would like to know a little bit more about the eligibility criteria. Maybe just a repetition. If I can move back to the slide.
Sure. So the eligibility criteria for nonprofit organizations, they're available on our website, but in general, most nonprofit organizations that are registered as nonprofits, be they charities or other nonprofit structures that might exist in the local jurisdiction, most of them will be eligible. Sometimes the challenges really come in with social enterprise organizations because they're sometimes difficult to categorize, and it's difficult to determine their profit status sometimes. And so those get a little bit more complicated, but nearly all registered nonprofit organizations will be eligible for membership.
Yeah, excellent. And Corinna is asking a very technical question that I don't know if Adrian you can answer. In case in case you can't, we can always look it up later. Corinna Towers, chair of Hemochromatosis UK, she's saying that apparently the webinar was successful because she's already completing the application to become a member, which is really good. But she's finding it that she would prefer, if possible, because I remind everyone that is an online application on the Trustful portal, and she said that she would prefer to have a look at all the questions because she can't complete the form all in one go. Is it possible to get the questions in a PDF format or download it in any way?
Yeah, there's a document. I think it's on the first page of the online application form, but it's a PDF link that's called Application Reference Document. And Elena, you and I can circulate a link to it after the webinar. But that's just a PDF document, 3 or 4 pages that runs through all of the information that you'll be asked for in the application form.
Yeah, excellent. If I remember correctly, there is also you also have to submit several documents, right?
Yeah, we'll ask for any annual reports that you might have on hand, your latest annual report, or potentially a registration document of the organization.
Yeah, and there is one person from Serbia who is a bit concerned because he had a look at the application form. He's like, I don't know if it's very safe to share. I feel that some information might be a bit sensitive for my organization, and is there probably a bit concerned about the privacy of the information that is sharing on the portal. Maybe we can just ensure them of the safety measure they're using and privacy.
Certainly. None of the information that you provide to us in the application form will be available externally to anyone outside of the Trust Law team. And any information that's posted on the portal that's available to law firms, available to members, we'll confirm with you before we make it available to them.
Excellent. Edward, in the meantime, did you find the information?
Yes, I have the statute translated over here. The association is governed by the provisions of Instrument 3 of the law of 27th of June 1921 on non-for-profit organizations, international non-for-profit organizations, and foundations.
Yeah, so you will be ESBL, yeah.
And in order for us to proceed with the application, we gave the translation of the statute and the translation of the statute, and basically we wrote down. I took care of the application. I wrote down what I told you with the presentation, that this is what we required basically.
And if you complete the application and if there's any additional information that we need, we'll contact you via email and ask for any details that maybe weren't included and that we'd like to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think this is great. So I'm trying to keep up with all the questions. Okay, this is an intriguing question. Does any decision to offer your help relate directly to how much cash a charity may have? We are solvent, but would rather spend our funds on patient activities than a lawyer. But we need help as well.
That's an excellent question. No, it doesn't matter how much revenue the organization has. If it's a nonprofit organization, if you're working on behalf of the public and the community, then we believe that as many of your resources as possible should be devoted to achieving that and not to paying lawyers necessarily.
And also, from my experience, it depends from country to country, but for example, the lawyers in Belgium told me that by law they have to dedicate some hours also to voluntary organizations. So, I mean, of course, it's better to spend money on the patients and the family's needs than spending them on these lawyers who anyway have to do work on a voluntary basis.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for the question and for the clarification. We have another question that one person is asking if, because they apparently have several folders, so several questions that are not exactly related. So we wanted to check if it's possible to open several requests, because if I read correctly, they have a question about HR in their country, but also another one linked to their constitution. So they would like to open two different questions. Would that be possible, or you treat only one question at a time?
No, absolutely. We generally will allow 3 separate requests to be posted on behalf of one organization at a time. You can submit as many requests as you want over time, but we ask that only 3 separate requests be active in our system at a time. So you can post 3 separate requests. They can be completely different areas of law or different subjects. And then as soon as one of them is connected with a law firm, then you can submit another request as long as there are only 3 active at a time.
Excellent. So you can bombard Trustful with a maximum of 3 questions at a time, which is good.
As frequently as you'd like.
Yeah, exactly. No, but it's also very important to not get too enthusiastic and to prioritize, because, and I can tell you by experience, and Edward could probably tell you the same. Of course, the legal team, which are very professional, will really provide you all the support they can. But there are certain things that the organization has to do. And in some cases, it's also a bit time intensive for the team of the patient organization to look all the papers that the lawyers provided, to check for information and digging into archives and so on. Therefore, don't get too enthusiastic and then, start small, and then you move to, let's say, prioritize, select one important question, and then you can move forward with the rest. Because I believe
sorry to interrupt, but also I think for us now, we just started from something very, very basic because our resources are very limited. But I can imagine now that if I would require something, I'm already in touch with the law firm. So it would be easier to make a request, I think.
Yeah, also to keep in mind that it's always very important to pass through the Trust Law portal, because the legal expertise that a law firm may have is not the same one as another law firm has. So if it's an HR question, it's very different from reading a legal contract about or the Constitution, for example. So passing through the Trust Law portal always allow you to receive the best and the most dedicated legal support. And Adrian, of course, correct me and add if you need.
Yes, well, first of all, we do try to always emphasize to organizations that the Trustful service will not cost you any money, but it may indeed cost you some time, as Elena and Edward were saying. So that's always something to consider. And we do appreciate if it is true that you can, once you've been connected with a law firm, you may form a relationship that is ongoing, but we do ask that that you let us know if additional work if the initial connection results in future projects that you work on together. And that's only because we like to keep that noted in our system, because like all of you, we're also a nonprofit, and the number of connections that we make each year is the way we quantify the benefit that we're having for our own beneficiaries.
I think you also asked, if I remember, I also wrote a report on how things were going.
Right, yes. We will ask you throughout the kind of life of a project. We will contact you first a few weeks after you've been introduced to the law firm, which we do via email, and what we call a connection email. And so we'll reach out to you a couple weeks after that, just to confirm that that the work has started and that you've been in contact with the law firm and that everything is going well. And at that point, if anything is not going well, we're more than happy to step in and provide any support needed. And then we'll follow up with you, usually 2 months down the line, for a quick check-in to see if the work has been completed, and if not, to get kind of an expected completion date.
Yeah, great. Adrian, I have another question for you, and probably a testimony from Edward on this. How can, it's a very blunt question, but it's true, I mean, it's part of the game. How can you be sure that the law firm, which will be a link with, won't ask us any money at the end? Pro bono work is, through law firms is always free. Like Elena was saying, a lot of these law firms have, and like Edward was saying, a lot of these law firms have pro bono, like a minimum number of pro bono hours that each lawyer has to dedicate each year to nonprofit organizations. And if there is ever any problem that happens, I can probably count on. I've been here for almost 5 years and can probably count on one hand the number of times that has happened. But if it does, if you're ever asked for any money, you can always come back to Trust Law and let us know the situation, and we can handle things and make sure that you're not asked for any money.
I myself can say that this issue was not an issue for us, because it was perfectly clear from the start that it was going to be a pro bono service. As I said, I myself was curious about how this was possible. So once I did also meet these lawyers in person in Belgium, and I asked them how this was possible. And I'm sure it's different in every country, but they did explain that they had a certain amount of hours to do pro bono, and that they also exceeded the hours that they had. So in the specific case of Wisen's case, I presume that they're very careful and attentive when it comes to these things, but it was absolutely clear that the service was pro bono. So we did not have any problems with that whatsoever.
And there are some regions where that has been a question, been an issue, once or twice, but it's never happened in Europe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we have just, I think, really two last questions, because we are running a bit out of time. A question for you, Adrian. What is the time frame between the initial request for being linked to the appropriate law firm and receive the legal guidelines? Does it vary dramatically depending on the range of the request? And I would add country.
We tell organizations generally to assume about a month between the time that you first submit your request and the time that you're introduced to a law firm directly, and that's because it can vary significantly depending on the assistance that you're requesting and the jurisdiction. So there are some countries where we have very large legal networks. The UK, for example, we have a very large network of law firms, and it's quite easy to find assistance here. There are some countries where our network is not quite as big, or where pro bono is just not as commonly practiced, and people aren't as familiar with it, and so our networks are smaller there. And it could take time, but we do have networks in all of the countries in Europe, and we will certainly be reaching out while your project is posted to all of our contacts there to try to secure assistance. But to answer your question quickly, we generally tell people to estimate about a month.
Yeah, no, I think this is key, and also to really plan as much as possible ahead, and really not considering it as like an emergency measure, but more something that you should probably plan and resource in terms of time in a proper way, because as you say, it doesn't cost you any money, but it definitely costs you time and energy to go through such a process.
Right, and like you said, we don't. Yeah, we don't accept. Sure, go ahead.
If I can add my experience on that, on what you just said. Yes, it was a bit time-consuming filling up the documents, but it did speed up the process afterwards. You know, because when the law firm got in touch with us, it wasn't as if they didn't know anything about us, and I was honestly surprised. I was a bit skeptical in the beginning, as I said, about the relevance of our request for help, and I was thinking, well, which law firm could be interested to give us help in this and that. I was so astonished about how quickly we got a response. So I must say, for me, the Trustful services were extremely effective. And as I said, as both Elena and Adrian said, maybe yes, an emergency measure perhaps would not be indicated for this kind of process. But when it comes to my personal experience, the pairing occurred very, very quickly.
Yeah, and I would just say also that with associations like those that are members of EPF, you know, lawyers are people too, and they have family members and friends who are affected by the same health conditions, and so there might be personal interest for many of them in supporting a lot of the organizations that would be members of EPF.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and also there is a very important component, as you say, like the human part. I think you know what they told us when we've been working with them is that for some lawyers it's very refreshing to have the social cause in mind when they work. So for them it's also a great pleasure to provide their expertise for a good cause. So this is something that we don't have to undermine any time.
Absolutely.
Well, I thank you very much, Adrian and Edward, for sharing your experience, your knowledge, and your fantastic program with us. I'm really happy of all the questions we got. Unfortunately, there are many more, but there's physically no time to go through all of them. We will make sure to follow up later on with the ones that we can tackle, and as well with a follow-up email with, as Adrian say, with more information on how to access the Trust Law services, as well as other publication that could be of support to you. I remind you that this webinar will be also available on our YouTube channel. If you're not following yet EPF YouTube channel, do so, and also activate the little bell to make sure that you will receive any notification anytime there is a new video popping up. And I thank you again for your attention, and see you at the next webinar.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye. Bye.